Michigan history. The library is also hosting a writers club for aspiring authors. The next meeting will be on Saturday, November 5th at 2 p.m. at Black Cat Coffee in Mount Clemens. For more information on these and other great community events, you can visit the library's website, htlibrary.org. Call them 586-329-1261 or email them at librarian@htlibrary.org. Our Harrison Township Senior Center hosts a monthly casino trip on the last Friday of every month. Space is limited for these trips, so please call for details and registration. The Senior Center also features chair yoga Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. for seniors to increase their strength and flexibility, as well as an aerobics strength class on Mondays at 1 p.m. and Fridays at 9:30 a.m. The Senior Center also hosts bingo every Wednesday at noon and euchre every Thursday at noon. The Senior Center takes many field trips throughout the year, so for more information on times and events in some of these trips, you can call our coordinator, Jen, at 586-466-1497. And as always, for more information on these, as well as all other township events, you can call the supervisor's office, 586-466-1445. Visit our website, www.harrison-township.org, or follow us on Twitter at HarrisonTWPMI. Any other announcements?
Yes, sir. Just wanted to announce the clerk's office will be open on Saturday, September 5th from 8 until 4 o'clock for residents to come in and request an absentee ballot in person. It's our weekend hours prior to the election, so you can request an absentee ballot then, or the next time you can vote in person on Tuesday the 8th. The polls are open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m.
Was it, what month was it?
November.
Okay.
November
I thought you said September.
Sorry, November.
Okay.
Yeah, and so actually, we have 3 weeks again between meetings.
We have a
Yep, so
lull
this is
there.
our last meeting
Last
before the
meeting
election.
prior to the election.
Oh, we don't normally get, and look at there, a non-election. It's been nice on a different month, a different year cycle. All right, any other announcements?
Parks and Rec has their Christmas tree lighting and Meet Santa coming up on December 1st, so it'll be here pretty quickly. We're returning to pre-COVID days where it'll be inside meet and greet, hot chocolate and cookies with Santa. Each child will receive a little gift, so we're hoping that we have a great turnout. That is Thursday, December 1st from 6 to 8 p.m., and we're just ramping up the PR on that.
You know what, I was looking through my board packet there, I'm sorry, the date. What was the date?
December 1?
December 1. All right, great. Anything else? Hearing none, we'll move forward in our agenda to item D1 from 41B District Court, which is the approval of the budget. So board members, I did add a little bit more information. The Court Management Council is comprised of members of each of the 3 funding communities, Harrison Township, Clinton Township, and Mount Clemens. We recently met and voted unanimously to recommend the adoption of the proposed 2023 budget. This budget does not include any payment of excess revenues to the 3 communities, although since 2019, the court has returned over $400,000 in surplus funds to Harrison Township. The last 3 years have been challenging to many units of government, but the team at 41B have been able to adjust their operations and avoid any deficits which would require a contribution from the funding units. Included with this year's budget is a letter which covers a few things that are different for this upcoming year. In the past, the court has been able to build up surplus funds for bond payments and maintenance funds, but much of these surplus funds have been used to supplement the operating expenses over the last 3 years because, of course, the COVID issues have really disrupted operations at our court. The court must make an annual bond payment early in the year, yet the revenues that the court generates are spread throughout the year. In the past, the surplus funds, as referenced, provided a cushion to allow the bond payment to be made from fund balance. But depending on our upcoming revenues, both as we finish 2022 as well as we enter into 2023, there is a chance that we might need to contribute funds to cover a portion of the bond payment. It is possible that if we are contributing to the court in this spring, to help them with that, that could lead to a surplus at the end of the year, which could be repaid to the funding communities. But these are truly all variables, all unknowns. All three funding communities, Clinton, Harrison Township, Mount Clemens, meet regularly, and as the year progresses, we will monitor this issue and provide updates. But as it stands, the budget as presented is balanced. I recommend the approval of the 2023 41B District Court budget as presented. As always, we do have a representative of the court. So we do have Mr. Jim McGrail. He is the court administrator for 41B, here to possibly address the board or answer questions or what have you. So, Mr. McGrail, I tried to summarize the things we discussed.
And I think you did a great job, Mr. Supervisor. Mr. Supervisor, Board, I really appreciate you taking time out of your evening. So obviously, I'm here to answer any questions.
Make a motion to approve the 41B District Court 2023 budget as presented.
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Witt, with support by Mr. Brado. Any discussion on the motion?
I always get to be proud of our court when everyone else is complaining about it, so it's an easy motion to make, so we
Absolutely.
appreciate having a well-run
very well-run.
organization.
It really is not a factor of this discussion, but it is worth noting that there have been discussions at a state level and actions, both throughout the governor's office, I think all the way up to state Supreme Court. The challenges associated with funding a district court have really not been an issue for us, Clinton or Mount Clemens, but they are a challenge in some other communities, a significant challenge at times. So there is a lot of discussion, and frankly, I think a high likelihood that district courts are eventually gonna be funded at a state level, and they won't really be a local issue. I don't know that. We don't know what that outcome will be, but, I think a majority of folks involved in the district court process think that's coming in the very near future. And I think the reason why I say that is, in the event that we do get further into 2023, and we meet as a management council and we find that there might be a need, I kinda look at this and say, well, I kinda have $400,000 that we took in over a period of time, and, you know, there's a lot of things that have been put on the court, a lot of different things, requirements they have. So I'm comfortable with this budget because, I do think this is gonna be one of the last times that we're gonna have to talk about this at a local level. And, so, anything else? All right, hearing none, and I'm assuming we had public comment there. We've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Brado to approve the 41B District Court 2023 budget as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, and thank you, Mr.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you, you too. All right, let's see, next on the agenda. Let's see, not too far here. Next on the agenda, E1, an appointment, regarding our Building Board of Appeals. Board members, our Building Board of Appeals is comprised of 3 appointed members, and we can appoint up to 2 alternate members. The Building Board of Appeal meets infrequently and typically on demand. Recently, one of our BBA members was concerned that they might have a conflict of interest on a pending case. Since there are only 3 members, it was suggested that we might want to add an alternate member, because really going from 3 to 2 is pretty narrow. Attached in the board packet is a resume from Mr. Max Schuster. Per state law, Building Board of Appeals members must have experience or training in the building trades. I believe the resume shows Mr. Schuster is qualified and would make a good addition to our Building Board of Appeals. Therefore, I recommend the appointment of Mr. Max Schuster to the Building Board of Appeals as an alternate member for a 2-year term to expire October 24, 2024.
So moved.
All right, is there support? Support. Motion by Mr. Tominello, with support by Mr. Badkins. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next, item F1, regarding a dock at 38902 Lakeshore. Board members, the residents of 38902 Lakeshore have requested approval of a 4-foot by 50-foot dock with a 15-foot by 14-foot boat hoist. The applicants have received the appropriate permits from Army Corps and from the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, Water Resources Division. Attached is the recommendation letter from Wade Trim. And so at this point, I would recommend to approve the construction of a 4-foot by 50-foot dock with a 15-foot by 14-foot boat hoist at 38902 Lakeshore.
I'll make the motion.
Is there support?
I'll support.
All right, motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Olgiati. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on the agenda, item F2. Hope I didn't go too far. These always come with a lot of information. This similar request is regarding dock relocation at 32833 North River Road. The residents of 32833 North River Road have requested approval to relocate the existing hoist 22 feet waterward and extend the existing dock 10 feet on the terminal end of the dock. The applicants have received the appropriate permits from Army Corps of Engineers and Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, Water Resources Division. Attached in the board packet is the recommendation letter from Wade Trim. So at this point, I'm recommending that we approve the relocation of the existing hoist 22 feet waterward and extend the existing dock 10 feet on the terminal end of the dock at 32833 North River Road.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mrs. Rose. Discussion, board members. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on our agenda, item G1 from our clerk's office. Mr. Witt?
Yes, clerk's office has received an application for the transfer of a liquor license from Upkar Banwait, Haprid Banwait, and Jaspreet Banwait to transfer the ownership of the 2022 Resort STD license issued under the applicable law. It's non-transferable SDM license, Sunday sales permit PM for STD license, and the Sunday sales PM for the SDM license. From Bajard's Inc. to Harry's Liquor Store Inc., which is located at 36650 Jefferson. All the necessary paperwork relative to the liquor license process has been completed as in order. So we're recommending the board recommend approval of this.
Any discussion, questions?
Just for relevant purposes, that's the old Cass's Market, just so everybody knows. So-
Yeah, and I was trying to look. I thought it was B.
It's
I thought it was
Cass's.
B. Jarbs.
No.
Well, that's the corporation, the
Exactly,
name.
yes.
But I
Yeah,
thought it
that's
was,
Basil. Basil's the
Basil.
owner right now. He's my neighbor, and
Yep.
he said good things about these people, so I would definitely make a motion to support the approval of the applicant's liquor license transfer.
all right. Got a motion by Mr. Olgiati. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Badkins. Any,
Roll call, Mr. Supervisor.
oh, good, yeah, it's a resolution. Any discussion on the motion?
So they're selling it?
They're selling it, yeah, he sold it, he sold it.
Oh, he did.
Yep.
All right.
All right, and no discussion, no public comment. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Mr. Olgiati?
Yes.
Mr. Batkins?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Verkest?
Yes. Thank you, Board. Resolution is adopted. Next on our agenda, item H1 from the Supervisor's Office. Board members, this July, our Building Department received and denied an application for a sign, and that denial was based on our ordinances. The current appeals process for signs requires that the Building Board of Appeals hear those appeals. The issues related to this case are more closely related to zoning issues and not necessarily construction issues. The attorney representing the applicant and our township attorney discussed the issue, and both parties agree that it would be best to have the zoning board of appeals hear this appeal. There is some work going on between us and our attorney to come up with a more permanent modification of our ordinances to allow for this in the future. But at this time, I am recommending that we approve the appeal for the appeal for this sign denial to be heard by the zoning board of appeals. There is in the board package a letter from the attorney representing the applicant that is requesting this appeal. It's worth understanding that, you know, we modify our ordinances from time to time to try to solve problems, streamline issues, and I truly can't not tell you what the appeal process was in the past. But I do recall that a prior building official came to the board and ultimately worked with the attorney to say, hey, this is really cumbersome. The majority of appeals and issues associated with a sign permit are related to things that are maybe more structural things with a sign. I'd like to hang the sign this way, I'd like to construct it or support it this way. And the ordinance had some clear definitions, but sometimes there were some good common sense solutions to how a sign might be constructed. So in good faith, we did change the ordinance to say, if you have an appeal, that it would go to the Building Board of Appeals, because they have a construction background. I think a majority of the issue with this case is the issue related to the spacing between billboards and things more that are more zoning, like setbacks and those kinds of things. And our concern was if the construction experts are listening to something and making a decision on an issue that might be more like a zoning issue, you know, maybe that really isn't the best body. So all parties agreed, hey, listen, this is a one-off. This hasn't happened in my 12 years, so this isn't something that happens all the time. But it seems to make sense to say, let the zoning board of appeals do it. We know the applicant agrees to it because they've given it to us in writing. Our attorney supports it, but it takes action by this board. So I have a recommended motion to approve the appeal of a denial for a sign at parcel ID number 17-12-07-301-8018 for 5 Star Outdoor Media LLC to be heard by the zoning board of appeals.
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Tominello, with support by Mr. Witt. Certainly not circumventing the appeals process, and as always, there are additional appeals that can occur, but I think this is just the best way to handle it, this issue at this time. Any-
Mr. Supervisor, is there, where's the location of the sign at?
You know, I'm not certain. I'll say as a general statement, I believe it's parallel to I-94, somewhere between North River Road and probably Hall Road, but I think.
Is that
it's even
spot
further
behind
south.
Wolverine by any chance? Is
It's
that right in
plus
there?
or minus right along there, right? I'm not sure.
I'm envisioning the same area, I don't know the.
I don't know the exact parcel, and I'll tell you, and at the risk of sounding aloof, for me, the issue isn't necessarily specific facts of this, because for me, as our role, we're just saying, if somebody says, hey, look, I wanted to do something, our building official said, hey, our ordinance says you can't, well, I'd like to make an appeal, maybe you can give a special reason. You know, I'm looking at it more as the concept, but to your point, it's plus or minus. I'd be willing to bet.
It is the parcel west, on the west side of the road across from Young Fong.
West?
Yes, sir.
Across from Yang Fang.
It looks like, oh.
It's this parcel right here.
Westbound.
Yeah, but that doesn't, oh, I got you. It's on the east side of I-94.
It's on the west side of,
Right, so
yeah.
we'd say between, it's
Exactly.
the parcel that you're pointing out, if you think about Executive Drive,
Right.
it's between Executive Drive and I-94, roughly in front of.
yeah, I don't know where they're proposing placement or anything. like
Yeah, but that
but-
parcel ID is
Yeah,
in that
that's the
area.
parcel
So it's on the east side of 94,
Yeah.
but it would be the west side, between I-94 and Executive Drive is what that parcel ID number is.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
C. William Bardell, 26-year resident. So you're saying that the spacing that the planning commission cleaned up on these billboards we're going to go backwards on the spacing. Is this like a 10-foot variance? I believe it was changed from, Mr. Tominell would know more about this, the spacing of the billboards on I-94. And so is this, I understand they have to take one out to put another one in. So we putting billboards back up on I-94 again? So all the work that was done to clean up this mess, we're going backwards now for some reason? Can you school me on that? Is it like are we off by 10 feet or are we off by 1,500 feet? Or what is the deal on that? Because there was a situation with these billboards that went to the zoning board of appeals or the building board of appeals, and they got that one snuck in over there. So are we going backwards on this stuff in this township, or are we gonna go forward and clean up this mess? So inquiring minds wanna know, and the tax-paying citizens would like to know what's going on with this stuff. Okay? You said billboards. So I woke up over here. So can you tell me if this is within 10 feet, or is this within 1,500 feet? Is this within 200 feet? What are we doing? Are we going backwards now on this, cleaning up this mess? I thought we finally cleaned this mess up after that one was snuck in over there. So school me on that one, and let's try to figure this out. So, I thought we cleaned this mess up. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. Couple notes that I just wrote down from the resident asking, are we going backward on spacing? Is this only a 10-foot variance? Are we going to take out a sign to put another sign in, or are we going backward in general? The short answer is I don't know, because I'm not the appellate body. What I know is that we have an ordinance in place, an applicant applied for something that doesn't meet our ordinance, and just like you, if you wanted to put a generator on the side of your house or put an addition on the front of your house, there's an appeals process if you're denied, and we believe at this point the best body to hear that appeals process is the Zoning Board of Appeals, because to your point, they're most familiar not only with that previous case that you referenced, but also zoning and planning and zoning ordinances in general. So although this isn't in our zoning ordinance, it seems to look and smell like a zoning question. So I'm not prepared to talk about the individual details of this because it hasn't come to me. It is going, if this board approves it, it is going to the Zoning Board of Appeals. If it isn't approved at the Zoning Board of Appeals, it's very possible that, similar to that last case, it could fall before us, because beyond that process, there's a circuit court process, right? So, and if it goes to circuit court, that's something we oversee. And at that point, I become a decision maker, and I would probably be more involved in this. But at this point, I'm not really prepared to talk about what the distance is, what the applicant's intentions are, and I don't think it should be the purview of this board to really consider if we like or don't like the application. We're merely saying someone who apparently either owns property or has an interest in property is asking for something that our ordinance doesn't allow. They need to be allowed an appeals process, and frankly, all parties involved think the best body to hear that appeal is the Zoning Board of Appeals. I don't think we should discuss if it's 10 feet, if it's a good idea, if it's a bad idea, because we're not decision makers. But we do have the power to steer this case to the right appellate body. So it may not answer the residents' questions, but again, our decision isn't based on whether we like or don't like the application. It's based on whether or not we would agree with both attorneys involved to steer this case to the right appellate body. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Witt to approve the appeal for a denial for a sign at parcel ID 171207301018 from Five Star Outdoor Media LLC to be heard by the Zoning Board of Appeals. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on our agenda is public comments. They can be about whatever subject you wish. We ask that you try to limit those to 5 minutes in length.
C. William Bardell, 26-year resident, clean cut, do-gooder boy next door, clean up, fix up, people helping people. I want to comment again on this billboard. We cleaned this thing up, and now we're going backwards. Does somebody know somebody, somebody's friend? I believe it's more regulatory. You say it's zoning? I believe it's regulatory. I think it's more regulatory falls into that. And I think there's something fishy going on in Denmark. Something's not right here. So it doesn't fall in the ordinance. The guy can't have it. And you're sending them back to the zoning board of appeals. I believe it's regulatory, and I believe you're going backwards. Sure, it's zoning, but it's also regulatory. So you are going backwards. That's my opinion. So I've missed one meeting in I don't know how many years. So I know what's going on here. So you are going backwards. You made a rule, and now you're going back on it. And that seems to be the problem in this township. We got problems, we got foundation issues with houses and everything else, and we got no follow through on ordinance in this township at all. But yet, some big spender comes in and wants to put up a big billboard up. You know, when they made the interstate highway system, Eisenhower's wife said no billboards. Just a little fun fact for you. So, somehow we got billboards, and we cleaned it up here in this township, and now you guys are going backwards on it. Okay? That's what's going on. You're going backwards. You snuck that one in over there, we cleaned it up, and now you're going backwards because you know somebody. Other than that, check out Save Lake St. Clair. Little things are happening. It's a slog. It's a marathon. It's not a foot race. And but I would sharpen your pencil because we cleaned that billboard mess up once before, and now you're going back on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? It could be about any subject you wish, but we do ask that you try to approach the podium so that the folks at home who might be watching can hear you. Oh, that's okay. We'd ask that you use the microphone. Yeah, yep. Yeah, I think we'll give you some help there.
Does that help you?
Yeah.
He's gonna back it up. Watch out, Mr. Huth. Mr. Huth, watch out.
Feel like a movie star. Gentlemen and ladies, ma'am, let me get situated here. Good evening, my name is John Shoemaker. That's Shoemaker. I've been a resident Harrison Township some 40 years, and I unfortunately missed the last meeting when they had the discussion on the bridge that's going on the end of my street or the beginning of my street on West Archer. I live at the end of the street where the temporary bridge would go onto West Archer across the canal. So I've been there forever. But I have some concerns, and I'm talking to the neighbors, and I'm getting so many different opinions about what transpired at that last meeting. And again, I'm sorry, I should have been there, but I wasn't. My first question, as you can see, I'm a mess, and I've got some serious heart problems as well. my immediate concern would be, and I'm not debating where the bridge should be, that's another issue. But if the bridge, as I understand it, there will be the existing bridge will remain partially open and partially closed for traffic, with traffic lights of some sort controlling which way, what's going on. My question is, and I've had this situation both with private and Harrison Township Fire Department, the need of an ambulance, emergency situation to get to the hospital. Is that point been considered? Is there gonna be is there access for ambulatory patients like me that have?
Sure. So if it's okay with the board, typically during public comment, we won't engage in a back and forth discussion, but I recognize your concerns and your questions. So if it's okay with you and the board, maybe I can give you a little bit of an explanation of what that plan is, because it might lead to another question, and I don't want to have you sit down and then lose your chance to ask further questions. So if that's acceptable to the board. So the West Archer Bridge, two-lane bridge that's really servicing a relatively small island where you live. I don't know if there's maybe 20 homes on that stretch, perhaps.
You don't know if there's what?
Probably 20 homes on your section, your island there. So the county has decided that bridge needs to be replaced. It is a county bridge, and it is a county project. They applied for federal funding. It's their job. It's their responsibility. It's not a township function. But we did host the meeting here to give the residents an opportunity to have a place close by to meet so they didn't have to drive to maybe a county facility. In order to replace that bridge, they clearly have to give some temporary access. So before they're going to remove the existing bridge, they're going to build a temporary bridge. It could have been at the end to the other West Archer, or it could be parallel to the existing span right next to it. The preferred location of that bridge to the county was to put it near the end and make a two-lane bridge so that it didn't interfere with construction. However, if they put a bridge across the river, they have to get permission from the state because they're blocking navigation of a waterway. The state said, before we'll give you permission to block navigation at the end of West Archer, we need to know that the people that are served by that canal agree with that plan. So they held one informational meeting where we had a chance to tell everybody what the idea was, and then a second informational meeting that was to follow up with questions and gauge that level of interest. In that second meeting, it became clear that there were a handful of residents who were opposed to the bridge being a two-lane bridge.
Excuse me. What you're saying is contradictory to what everybody in the neighborhood is saying. A handful you talk about, they tell me was 4 people.
Okay, I mean, my version, I'm sorry about the quantity. I believe that the majority of people would have accepted the bridge at the end.
Did the majority of the people get to vote?
They did not, because the state said unless it's unanimous, they wouldn't allow it.
Unanimous among all the people that are in attendance?
Nope.
Or unanimous among those 4 people?
I can answer that, but I really didn't want to get into a back and forth.
Either
for it.
did I. I
want to answer
came
your
here
question.
about an ambulance.
Right.
But I'm willing to discuss this.
Right. So the state said if there's anyone who has property that accesses that canal, meaning half of the residents on West Archer and a handful of residents on East Archer, if they're unwilling to agree to it, we will not grant you the permit. If it's as many as 4, perhaps, when 4 people said we won't agree, the county made the decision to end the meeting and say we're going to apply for a single-span bridge. It's not our decision. I can't tell you, I can give you my personal opinion as a lifetime resident, but it didn't matter to me because the county was the deciding factor. So the county made the decision to go with a single-span bridge. Short answer to your question, at no time will we be blocking access for emergency vehicles. Not only an ambulance, but think of the weight and difficulty of a fire truck. That bridge will be able to service everybody on West Archer, and although it'll be a single span, no different than any other emergency vehicle, they clearly have access to come across there and run through a red light if necessary. So while this is going to be an inconvenience for, maybe 3 to 4 months, by no means will it block access for emergency vehicles.
Okay, it answers one of my questions. So is there a procedure or something that's been approved by this body on how to approach? Let's say, for example, somebody come up with an idea, they wanted every other garage door painted a certain color. And can they call 4 people? Can they dominate and say, yes, we want that, and that's what it'll be? Is there anything in writing on how this board functions? I'm not challenging the outcome of where the bridge is going to be constructed, just the manner and how we got there.
Right, and super duper important, I can't emphasize enough, this board did not have any role in that decision-making process. So what you're saying really is saying, why did the state say 4 people could stop it? And asking me to speak for the state is like going to your dentist and asking for an opinion on your heart. It's 2 different bodies. We had no say in that bridge. It's a county bridge, and it's federally funded, and the permits come from the state, but none of it is overseen by this board. We merely gave this room made it available so that the county could meet with the residents.
You represent the residents of the township, right?
Yes, sir.
What voice did we have?
We did the best we could by making a room available, but we aren't decision makers.
But what's conducted in the room is that what I'm looking
We
for?
use this room for a lot of things.
Yeah, I can imagine. But I'm looking for, like Robert's Rules of Order, some way it was conducted. Did you check the 4 people that came in that they were actually residents of East Archer?
And the key here is which is the county made the decision to proceed with the single-span bridge. We had no say in the matter.
Aren't you a little worried about what legislation county-wise can be enacted without the residents' input or voting or secret ballot or some procedural rules? If this was done according to the township rules, I'm right with you guys. But if there's no rules governing such a meeting, I think it's out of order, personally.
Yeah.
And I'd like to go on record as saying that. And one more last question. If that meeting would have went the other way, if for some reason the rest of the people that didn't vote got a chance to vote, and they voted not to tear that bridge out and put the temporary one in while it's being constructed, would that have been what's going to happen? Somebody?
Well, and again, I tried to give you some information. It's clear we're breaking down here. I don't want to get into a back and forth. That's the reason we don't normally comment during public comment. So I'll answer your question, if that's the question you have, at the end of public comment.
If the vote would have went the other way, would the temporary bridge been put in and the existing bridge be tore down?
And I'll just tell you,
You can't answer.
asking me how a decision would be made when I'm not a decision maker, I can't answer that. It would be like me telling you whether you should have an asphalt driveway or a concrete driveway. It's your driveway. You're the decision maker. We're not decision makers in it. It's not our bridge. It wasn't our meeting. We have no permitting and no approval in that process. We
Same
merely
question. If the vote would have went the other way,
ask the guy who decides that. I don't know that. I can't
well,
speak
then
for that guy.
you're saying that the 4 people didn't decide it. The 4 residents of Archer, they did or didn't decide.
I'm saying to you, as someone who is at both of those meetings, I helped them get a mailing list so that everybody.
What about my knees?
I said nothing about your knees. I said I was at both meetings.
Oh, both meetings.
Both meetings. We helped them get a mailing list to notify all the residents. We did our best to get that message out. But in the end, no one asked me my opinion, and no one gave me the authority to make a decision on that. The county made that decision, so if you're saying, why did they do that? You've really got to ask someone at the county, because the Department of Roads was the body who decided how to move forward in that project.
You know, for 40 years I've been living on that house, and when it rains real hard, there's ducks and geese right in front of my mailbox. And I've talked to the inspector that comes by, shows me how that bridge is on, that is on their list of things to do, year after year after year after year. And I'm not addressing it to you, I'm looking at a board. Is the board got the power, or I think the meeting was conducted, council, is that typical procedure?
Yeah, and
In
again,
township?
sir, I did my best. This isn't going anywhere. We're going back and forth. I'm happy to talk to you. I'm happy to meet with you, but this forum is not a discussion, and I apologize that I allowed to get to that. I tried my best to explain to you what happened. We do not make decisions. Nobody here has any say about that bridge.
Who had the decision?
The county.
And what was the meeting, why was a vote taken at the meeting?
There was no vote taken. The county made the decision to end the meeting based on.
Well, here's the rumor on the street. These 4 people controlled the meeting. They popped up like Jack in the Box and would speak whenever they wanted to and as long as they wanted to. And the chair, if you have a chair, wouldn't rule them out of order. And then they said, the motion is passed, end of the meeting, and the meeting is adjourned. That's the rumor on the street. So I come down here to get the truth. And I didn't get anywhere, but I got the fire truck to come pick me up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Don't like it though.
So seeing no other public comment, we'll move back to board comment. I can let the resident know, I didn't like the outcome either. No motion was made. I didn't chair the meeting. I did my best to try to bring order to the meeting, but there was no motion made. There was no motion made. It was not a,
It was an informal meeting, it was an informational meeting, it
Right, it
wasn't
was informational.
a quorum of a body that had authority to
At
act.
that point, it was an informal meeting. Does that mean regardless of what happened at that meeting, the outcome would still be what's going to happen with the bridge?
and the person who could answer that question has to work for Macomb County, because Macomb County ran the meeting. They made the decisions for that meeting. They called the meeting. They were in charge of that meeting. So coming to us and asking us about a decision that another body made, I simply can't answer for another body, sir. I'm sorry.
Yep, and you know what we could do is we can hand you your county commissioner, she's the person that represents you at the county level. Her name is Barb Zinner, we're happy to give you her phone number, but that's the elected official that oversees that body. We're happy to pass it along to you once we're done here.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah,
And you don't get one of these, your call's important to us.
no, not with,
Hold on the line for the next year or so.
she's very responsive, I'm sure.
Okay, give me your phone number.
Absolutely. All right. Also, we had a,
As soon as we're done, we gotta finish our meeting first.
yeah, we're almost to the end of the meeting, sir. Also, there was a question about whether the issue was a zoning issue or a regulatory issue regarding the appeal for a sign. It is a regulatory ordinance, but we believe that the best way to handle that is through the zoning board of appeals, which is what the attorneys advised us. And someone had made a comment that we made a rule and now we're going back on it. Simply stated, this body does make ordinances. We did make a rule, and in fact, we changed, during that process, we modified the ordinance that dictates the spacing between the signs, and that was done collectively with the Board of Trustees at the time. Nobody's going back on anything. If we say that you can have a 2-car garage on your home, but you, based on your own personal desires, want a 2.5-car garage, the fact that someone asks us to build a 2.5-car garage on a house that might only allow zoning for 2-car garages doesn't say at all that this body agrees with a 2.5-car garage. But once we put in ordinances, we have an appeals process. So if someone says, I want to build X, doesn't mean I want them to build X, but I'm not the decision maker. People have the right to ask for variances, whatever that might be, whether it be a variance on the number of, I don't know, anything, whatever that is, there's a process. If you wanna build a dock and the dock isn't allowed, you can come to us. We can review, we have a process, and then this body makes a decision. This body doesn't hear zoning ordinances, this body isn't asking someone to put up this sign. I'm not aware that anybody in the township is asking for this sign. But if someone owns property, they have the right to ask to do something with that property. If they're denied, they have the right to appeal it. So regardless of whether anyone on this board thinks this is a good idea or a bad idea, everybody's treated the same. We have to have an appeals process. Both attorneys involved thought the better appeals process would be through the Zoning Board of Appeals. So therefore, based on a written request and action of this body, this applicant can now go there. I don't know the details of the case, and I don't want to know them, because I don't want to voice my opinion whether I like it or I don't like it. But it doesn't matter. Nobody here is saying they like this or don't like it. So I can't be going back on something I did before, because I'm not making a decision. What we've said is, let's make sure we give the applicant a fair and reasonable appeals process, so that later down the line, someone doesn't say, well, you did it wrong and I want to sue you. We want to be as open, as transparent, and as fair as possible to any applicant, whether it be a resident, a non-resident, a property owner who wants a sign, or someone who'd like to erect a shed or a fence. So the process we're following has nothing to do with making a rule and going back on it. The process we're following is saying, it's clear, history shows, we did make a rule, but any rule we make, any ordinance we enact, or practically any ordinance we enact, can be appealed. A decision can be appealed. This person's appealing that process. Our purview is simply who should hear that appeal, and now we've decided it'll be the Zoning Board of Appeals based on the recommendation of our attorney. Nobody's going back on anything, so I'm frankly offended by that implication that we're now taking someone's money or agreeing to somebody. We're not making a decision on this. We only said, let's make sure the right appellate body hears it. So, hope that's a clarification. Any other board comment? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.
Adam, do you have that number?
Yep.